You're with us live from Napa in California. Your instant reaction to what is already a historic verdict?
Well, I was stunned. The evidence was overwhelming of Trump's guilt, but still to see a jury come back in 2 days and with a verdict of guilty on 30 counts of a former president. I mean, it's a really sad day for the United States because you don't want to see a former president indicted and convicted of criminal charges. And yet it's also so clear that Trump engaged in so much illegality in order to obtain the presidency in the first place.
Well, sad day. At the same time, it shows that, in a sense, the legal system works, right?
Yes, absolutely. It shows that, in America, everybody is accountable to the law, and that includes the very powerful, including a former president. It's also particularly important here that this happened in a state court rather than a federal court. Even if Trump were to win the presidency again, he won't be able to pardon himself for this. He can only pardon himself for federal crimes, not state crimes. So this conviction, of course, depending on the appeals, will stand regardless. And there is indeed the possibility that Trump will serve jail time for this.
Well, OK, so several questions arising from what you just said. You said it's a state court. Even if he is reelected president, he cannot pardon himself for a state crime. But what would that mean then? If he were in that hypothetical scenario, if he were elected president and he's guilty in the state of New York, what does that mean?
That means there is nothing that prevents somebody from being elected president as a convicted felon. It is unlikely that he'll be in jail at that time. He's very likely to remain out of jail pending appeal. I mean, there is a significant amount of jail time that could potentially be attached to these convictions. Each charge has about 16 months to a 4-year period of jail time. And, if you added that up for the 30, that's not for the 30 counts, that would be a lot of jail time. That would never be likely. I mean, most of these kinds of penalties are concurrent rather than consecutive, meaning that all of the time is served at once. But it would be very unlikely that jail wouldn't be in the cards, that Mr. Trump would, in fact, be sent to jail for some period of time. I don't know, frankly, what would happen if he had been elected president and his appeals had run out and now he was a convicted felon and should go to jail, but he's also the sitting president of the United States. Somehow I can't see him getting sent to jail under such circumstances, but it's, there's no precedent for any of this.
One assumes that he will and that his legal team will appeal this verdict. What would be the rough timeline on this?
That's hard to say. I mean, they'll appeal and, New York State seems to be eager to go through this very quickly, but there would be 2 rounds of appeals because you appeal to the appellate court and the Supreme Court of the state. So, and then he might even come up with a way to have a federal appeal. You can sometimes appeal a state verdict under something called habeas corpus, saying that you are wrongly being held by the state. So I'm sure that his legal team will be very creative and come up with all sorts of ways to delay this, just as they have delayed the federal trial. But in the state of New York, unlike in the federal courts where Mr. Trump has had some clear friends in the courts, in the Florida case, he has Judge Eileen Cannon, who has delayed this case longer than anybody thought possible. And she's a Trump appointee. And then the immunity case that is still pending, where Trump had the Supreme Court taking the case. And we're still waiting to hear how that turns out. And he definitely has friends on that court. It's really his chances on appeal in state court are not nearly as high as his chances of keeping the cases in federal courts in abeyance. So this conviction is, likely to stand. But at the same time, there has never been a conviction of anybody on charges like this for this kind of conduct in New York. So, you never know if some judges will find some kind of reason to dismiss the charges after all, but that seems unlikely when you're convicted of 30 counts.
So there is a world in which Donald Trump is reelected president as a convicted criminal, and then this trial, would still be under appeal at the time during his presidency.
Yes, that definitely is true. Unless he could find some way to get the Supreme Court to stop the case, saying under other kinds of precedents that say that a president shouldn't be distracted by, state court or by court proceedings while they're president, and it should be held in abeyance. But I don't see that here. So it's hard to see how this all plays out. And also, of course, Mr. Trump is going to immediately be attacking the verdict. But remember, this isn't just what now a judge, he's always said the judge and the prosecutors. But now this is 12 ordinary citizens, 12 regular New Yorkers are the people who found Trump guilty. And that's a little harder. He's going to say all these 12 jurors are also corrupt. I wouldn't be surprised to see President Trump trying to dig into who these jurors were and release something on their backgrounds and see these people under attack. It's really brave of these people to have sat on a jury, given the incredible the threats and things that have been hurled at other people who have been involved in the court system, involved with President Trump. So we can expect to see some pretty vindictive behavior on Trump's part following this verdict.
Okay, I'm going to have to discuss the politics of this. I'm just seeing, Melanie, that the sentencing date has been set for July 11th. You already talked to us about that, whether or not there is going to be jail time attached to this. You said unlikely, but we can't completely rule it out. So that's where we are at this stage. Melanie Sloan, thank you very much for joining us.